me at Cello, Cello. You had me at Cello. You had me at Cello. Oh, you had me at Cello. Hi, everybody. 5 o'clock on a Friday. Before we hit the practice room to practice all weekend long, let's take a little time for a cello chat. I'm very excited to talk today with April Dannelly-Schenck. April, you have some very interesting connections. Everybody has such an interesting story with music, and I can't wait to hear about yours. But first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's a warmer weekend in the winter of Wisconsin, so it's a good time.
That's a good thing. Yes, it is. All right, so how did you get started with the cello, and how did your musical path evolve?
I got started at a very young age. I started at the age of 4 with a Suzuki teacher who, for a long time, and I think she's still there, now teaches at Peabody Prep, Gretchen Geddes. And I apparently had wanted to start the cello even younger. Well, I wanted to play an instrument. I watched my sister, who's 5 years older than me, essentially, she started violin when she was 5. So I would go to her lessons, and I really wanted to play the violin. And my mom said, "No, you all are way too competitive to be playing the same instrument." So I chose the cello. I like watched Yo-Yo Ma on Sesame Street or something, and I was like, "Yeah, that's what I want to do." Which I think is great because I think it really fits my personality well. Um, and I studied with Gretchen until she moved to Baltimore. I'm from North Carolina originally. And then I had another teacher, Kim Eitzen, for a short period of time, and then started studying with Liz Beelman, who is the assistant principal the associate principal of the North Carolina Symphony.
Hmm.
And I studied with her from the age of 7 or 8, I think, through graduating high school.
Wow. All right.
And I at some point she was not a Suzuki teacher. She was my first like traditional teacher. We continued studying mostly the Suzuki rep for a while until maybe book 6 or so, and then sort of branched out. And this was before the Suzuki repertoire was a little bit more cello tailored.
Hmm.
So I think it was a good thing that we branched out when we did.
Hmm.
And did the orchestra festival thing because I was in North Carolina. Brevard was local, and Eastern Music Festival also. So I went to both of those, fell in love with orchestra music. And then my teacher, Liz, was like, if we're going to do this, then you should get serious. And, I've heard that Meadowmont's great and people work really hard there. So I auditioned and got in and got to go there for 2 summers in high school. And that was when I got like really serious. It also was sort of when my anxiety in
Hmm.
playing really ramped up because people are just outstanding musicians there, and there's a lot of pressure, mostly probably self,
Hmm.
um, from our own um, drive. But so I went there, and then I went to Oberlin Conservatory, and loved it. I studied with 3 different teachers there, because my first teacher, Peter Rido, left at the end of my first year.
Hmm.
And then Hans Jensen was there for a year, learned a lot with him. Um, and then Amir Eldan came the last, like my third year. And we just worked really well together. He's amazing. Really developed like Hans sort of started the development of like technique routine and stuff like that. And really, he really worked with me on my upper range vibrato, which had always been really tight. But Amir really developed my intonation and
Hmm.
just that sense of sort of structure in my body and relaxing when I was playing and like finding a center. And then that was honestly pivotal because Amir encouraged me to study with his teacher, Uri Vardy, for grad school. So I went to UW-Madison, and he did so much for me in terms of, dealing with nerves and in terms of centering my mind and connecting my mind and my body in playing, um, and just sort of giving me confidence. So that was huge. And then the rest of my journey sort of just goes from there. I moved to St. Louis. I had met my husband at UW-Madison, and we moved to St. Louis for a while. We were there for almost 5 years, and I took one professional audition, actually for the North Carolina Symphony,
Okay.
and I was like, this is not for me. Like, do I even really want this if I win this job? And it was just the whole process was not fun to me. And yeah, I began teaching, and that was when I began Suzuki training. Because when I began teaching, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know how to teach a beginner really. And I could do it, but I was like, I just don't feel like this is like I'm as good as I need to be if I'm teaching beginners. And I fell in love with teaching Suzuki. At the time, I was also an adjunct at Lindenwood University teaching the upper level theory classes because I got my master's in theory as well at UW Madison. Um, and because I wanted to be able to teach theory, I was a theory TA at Madison, and that was what gave me my scholarship at Madison. And I really loved teaching. We at Madison we teach oral skills, the TAs do, and then we just sort of support what happens in the theory classroom. And so after that, I was like, well, I want to be able to teach this, and to teach it, I should probably get at least a master's degree. Didn't like it the studying of it enough to keep going for my PhD. Like I didn't want that to be my full-time job. But there are a fair number of adjunct jobs that want you to be able to teach theory too. Like Lindenwood. That was probably honestly what got me the job. It wasn't my cello teaching, but it was my theory masters. And I enjoyed that a lot while I was there. Freelanced a lot. I was in Peoria Symphony and a few other like local groups. Played a lot with Illinois Symphony, which is strangely the only group that I've played with my entire adult life until really starting my current job because it was sort of like central. It's pretty close to St. Louis. It was close enough to Milwaukee for me to travel down when we first moved here. And then it was farther from Louisville when we lived there, but I still traveled there because I loved playing with them. But after St. Louis, we moved to Milwaukee. My husband wanted to go back to school to become an architect. So he ended up going to architecture school here, and I started working at the conservatory. And they have a program there where they have a lot of their teachers teach. Sorry, Oliver, stop. Sorry. They have a lot of their teachers teach general music in schools as contractors. Particularly at that time, Milwaukee Public Schools didn't have any music teachers full time in them, because this was before a referendum required it in 2020, I believe, was when the referendum passed.
Hmm.
It might have been 2019. Um, but so I started teaching general music and I was like, ooh, I never thought I would want to teach in a classroom, but this is engaging. It's fun. I'm working with different kids than the ones who I was in private lessons. So when we moved to Kentucky for his first job, I decided that I would try substitute teaching in the public schools there. And I wanted to try and do orchestra because obviously as a strings player, that's what I wanted to do, but I was always fearful. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna hate this. Um it Everyone's gonna be plucking all the time and it's gonna really annoy me and it's gonna be out of tune and it's just gonna like ruin my sense of intonation and stuff. But I really loved it. And so I had always wanted to move back to Milwaukee, convinced my husband of it too. And when we moved back, I got a job teaching in MPS in Milwaukee Public Schools. So here we are now, 3 years in, and I teach both general music and strings. At my specific school, I teach violin to currently kindergarten and first grade. And then third grade and up, I teach strings in third and fourth. Fourth grade is sort of like a survey where we don't spend much time on strings. We do a bit of everything. And then orchestra, fifth grade through eighth.
Wow. Never a dull moment with that age group.
No, and it's fun because I switch off days. Like I have one day where I teach just fourth through eighth grade, and then the other day I teach the little ones, kindergarten, third, and fifth. And so it's a lot of variety, which for me, I really, really love that variety in my life.
Excellent, excellent. So let's see, you touched on a number of things there. One of them I have to jump on first is your you talk about kind of the connection between playing in tune and being relaxed, and I can think of so many cellists, young cellists in particular over the years who play with so much tension that they're never entirely in tune. If they just place their finger down and they leave it right there, as opposed to when you have a nice balanced sense, not just of your hands, but of your entire body. You can make those tiny little adjustments instantaneously if the flute player starts to go a little bit flat or the oboe goes sharp or something, and you're just right with them automatically. Um, but anyway, I don't know if you want to elaborate any further on that connection between the need to be relaxed and the ability to play reliably in tune.
Well, I think it goes with like not necessarily just intonation, but really everything. Like if when you're playing, you're so concerned about just getting everything right, and then all of that tension is going to build up, and nothing is going to be as consistent because the amount of tension is always going to vary. And so then the accuracy in your distances and your fingers, that's never going to be consistent. And so you're losing consistency. You're also, and obviously your attention's always going to vary, but it there's a way to like make sure that you're centered, and when your focus is on other things, it almost makes it easier to adjust when you need to. I don't know if that really answers that
Yeah.
question, but I think I don't know if that's something that I consciously think about a lot, um, is the tension with adjustment, but that's absolutely true.
Hmm. It seems like some of the people who really clamp also have then a fear of moving their hand, and shifting can be also just agonizing. Sometimes that can go hand in hand with the performance anxiety. But here too, do you have tips to our viewers as to how, in some cases people think, all right, do you eventually get rid of the fear of public performance? And in some respects, it can be, what was it, maybe Vladimir Horowitz or somebody saying, no, he's afraid every time, he has that anxiety every time he goes out to perform. He just knows how to not let it affect his playing.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's some of it. This is not an easy solution, but I think a lot of it came just with age and maturity for me and experience. Um, and like basically, the older you get, the wider your world gets. And the more, for me, the more I realized that it wasn't a big deal if I made a mistake. So the audience is not there to check the boxes. Like, oh, did she nail that shift? Oh, did she nail that shift? Oh, what's this like here? That's not what they're there for. They're there for an experience, like a musical experience. And if I am so concerned about every single shift that I make, I'm not able to communicate a musical experience with the audience. And so I think that context is helpful for me. I think with everyone, it ends up being something a little bit different because we're all different people, but the importance of communication over perfection, I think, was what changed my mindset.
Yeah, nicely said. Okay, and you clearly you picked up Spanish at some point because explain, if you would, that you teach at the ALBA school in Milwaukee.
Yes. So that's funny that you say that. I've never taken Spanish in my life.
Ah,
I studied French in middle and high school. I studied German at Oberlin for 2 years. I went to Italy for a semester abroad, and like over the summer, we have Oberlin in Italy. And for music theory masters, you're required to be proficient in two of those three languages. So French, Italian, German. And my two were definitely French and German. And I never took Spanish, but I am now immersed in it every single day. And especially for the K-5 and first grade violin classes, the parents are there. And a lot of our parents don't speak English. And so I've had to learn through a combination of like summer Duolingo stuff, because I've tried doing Duolingo during the year and I fall off the wagon every single time. I cannot, like, I just don't have time. But I study it really hard every single day over the summer, because I'm not hearing it at my house over the summer. And then I just ask questions. So like I'll ask the students or the parents, like, how do you say this body part? How do I say X, Y, and Z? Like, I'm a mirror, and they teach me like soy un espejo, because I do everything backwards for them, and it confuses the parents. It doesn't confuse the kids, but I'm holding my bow with my left hand, and the parents are like, "What is she doing?" And I'm like, "No, I'm a mirror. Don't do what I'm doing, like they're opposite me." And so I've learned a lot of weird stuff, like non-normal Spanish, um, what you need to teach strings. And I can understand a fair amount now. Like my first year there, nothing. And now the kids in middle school will be talking in Spanish and I'll respond and they're like, "What? You understand us now?" And I'm like, Yeah, I understand quite a bit, so don't say bad things.
So it's a bilingual school, but also with a fine arts focus.
It is, yeah. So there's, this is something that we will see how it ends up shaking out in terms of programming, but and budget stuff. But right now we have violin in the younger grades, and they have it just 1 day a week. We also teach, so there are two full-time music teachers, me and then the other music teacher. We split general music in the younger grades, and then she teaches band and I teach orchestra in fifth through eighth. And it uh, so the other days they get general music, K5 and first grade. And I send videos and stuff of what we're learning so that the parents who aren't able to come to class, because obviously some people work and they just can't make it, they can practice at home. There's varying degrees of that, as I'm sure you can imagine, because every kid's in it. And so some of them, like I was so proud the other day, I looked around at my first grade class and I was like, hot dog, like 2/3 of them have these gorgeous bow holds. But it really varies, honestly. So like there's still some kids in first grade who hold their instruments with the wrong hand every now and then. So, but then third and fourth grade, it's sort of like a little survey and experience. We're working up from the bottom. So, and then fifth through eighth grade, every kid is either in orchestra or band. I wish we had the capacity to give them a little bit more choice. We're hoping at some point that, especially in seventh and eighth grade, the Wisconsin state laws allow for seventh and eighth grade to choose either music or art for their arts requirements. And so we're hoping that one day we'll be in a place in terms of scheduling where we can do that. But we have an amazing art teacher. I look at the work that those kids produce and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never do this. It's outstanding. So
Very nice.
yeah.
Now let's see. So now you have a number of videos online of you performing quite a bit of repertoire. Are a number of these videos for the sake of the students then?
Let me ask you which videos are you talking about the ones I made during the pandemic?
Oh, yes, it does look like they're the
Perfect.
pandemic sort of video.
About the video.
Yes. So what?
Yeah, so I was bored.
Yeah,
So what
right.
happened in the pandemic was that we had just, yeah, August that we moved there.
Oh, shoot. It's still choppy. Rats. Let me see if I can refresh anything on my end too. Uh, hmm. What else to try?
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. I
Hmm.
tried to exit out of something. Hopefully that'll help. And I'll turn off my Wi-Fi on my phone. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, we had been living in Kentucky for only 6 months when everything shut down. And it was crazy. Like I had been subbing, everything had just started like going for me. I was getting lots more sub jobs. I was just starting with a few private students. And gigging was really picking up. And gigging, by the way, if anyone wants a place to go and be a freelance, Louisville is a great place to live. Louisville, Nashville, that whole area, like the freelance orchestras pay really well there. People are super kind and like very, very generous in terms of opening up. They and like just really, really generous freelance musicians there. And warm people, wonderful, wonderful freelance world. But yeah, so everything was opening up for me. And then all of a sudden, obviously everything closed. And then, but I got on unemployment. I don't know if that's like something that I should be able to say in public, but my unemployment was based on my income the previous year.
Yeah.
Because, and I was working at the conservatory. So we were like kind of set. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I just started making these videos. A lot of people started using Audacity to put together like multi-part videos. And so I was arranging whatever I wanted. I like did Bridge Over Troubled Water for my dad's birthday because it's his favorite song. Did like a little mashup of You Are My Sunshine and Here Comes the Sun for my mom's birthday.
Oh, that's
Um, yeah, I was frankly I was just bored. But a lot of my students have found that. And they like watch it and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Miss, that's so great." But I do have a separate YouTube video that's through my school, but I keep it private because frankly, like someone like you watching me do a violin video would make me feel a little uncomfortable.
That's funny. So now, do you have some words of advice for our viewers about how to go about with the freelance process? You know, getting one's name out there, the patience it takes, the persistence.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I would always be ready with your main audition excerpts and your concerto. You want to just be prepared for that whenever. Um, but in terms of contacts and stuff like that, I honestly, living in so many different places, I got it down so that like within a year, I was usually set. You want to reach out to any cellist you can find. We're a friendly bunch of people, and typically people who are already established are more than willing to help you out. And they want to be able to, first of all, you want to make sure that if you're teaching lessons, that your price is comparable to theirs. You don't want to be lowballing people. You don't want to be way higher than people of similar experience and training. So you like that's a good place to start. Just say, hey, I'm new to town. I am a private teacher. I'm wondering if you have any tips or tricks. Reaching out to, and a lot of times it can be good to at least start in a music school. And if they have any openings, a lot of times they won't, but sometimes they do, and then it's a good place to start. Reaching out to as local of orchestras, I would usually look in like a 3-hour radius, which sounds like a pain, and it is, and that's another reason why I left the freelance life, right? Like driving sucks. It's a lot of nights and weekends. You don't see your partner if you have one, if they work like normal hours. If they're doing the same thing as you, obviously you do. But it's just a lot of tiring scheduled stuff. But looking out to those, then you're going to start meeting the other musicians in the area. Hopefully some of those will be holding auditions, and then you'll be able to go and show them. And I would say don't give up, even if you don't make it into an orchestra. A lot of times they'll file your name in a sub list. And the first thing that I would always do was I would email all of the personnel managers for those orchestras and say, hey, I'm new to town. Here's my resume. And I'd love to play for you all if there's an opportunity to do that. As string players, we're lucky in that they need subs a lot more than wind brass percussion. So another thing you can do is you can reach out to the principal cellos of those groups, and they will sometimes contact you. I didn't try that quite as often as the personnel managers, though.
Right, excellent, excellent advice. Okay, so music theory, it's not just abstract, is it? How do you help your students understand the value of, the connection between knowing how music works and then how that reduces to practice in the practice room and on stage?
It really depends on the level and age of the student. When they're younger and more beginning, I work primarily with form. And when we're learning something, we learn the form of it. We learn, like line one's the exact same thing as line three. So let's just learn line one, and then we know two-thirds of this. And stuff like that, like really simple. And obviously, if they're really little, we talk about like building sandwiches and all sorts of food thing, whatever they want to do in terms of food, form, and making it a little more playful. At a certain point, we start talking about like special notes, accidentals, and like what makes those special. How can we bring that out in our playing? And we start talking about phrasing a lot more. That's something I'm actually working in school with a lot of my students on right now. And I think it's very engaging for them because it provides them with a lot of choice, and it they can bring their own voice into what they're performing. And obviously that's what playing music is about. Like if we were all robots, then a computer could do it. But theory allows you to sort of create your own structure and say, no, I like the way that this flat two here sounds, and I'm going to bring that out. Or I'm going to go past the flat two into the five and really bring out that five. And so it just depends on their level and how much you're teaching them at that time and how you talk about it. But you can talk about a flat two with a 7-year-old just in a different way that you talk about a flat two with a college student.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. It is funny. It's struck me quite a while ago that when one goes online to watch master classes by the great and famous cellists, the percentage of the time that what they're talking about is not the technique of cello playing, it's the theory of the music, it's the form and the things going on. You need a music theoretical understanding of the piece than to help you perform it more like yo-yo ma or yourself at a yo-yo ma level.
Yeah, I think especially form is interesting to me, because it helps in so many ways, right? Like it helps your memorization, it helps musicality and phrasing a lot. And so when you're talking about the structure of a piece, when you have the same thing 3 times, but it's a little different each time, you obviously aren't going to play it the same way. And you have to recognize what makes each time a little bit special. And you have to have a strong knowledge of the harmonies underneath the other parts, everything that's going on there to be able to create a meaningful performance of that phrase or that section of the piece.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. All right. April, what does 2025 hold in store? Upcoming performances and projects?
Well, right now I am playing Godspell the musical at Dominican High School.
Nice.
When I first moved back here, I wasn't doing much playing, but I've started to grow a little bit more. And that runs through sort of the end of February almost.
Right.
I'm playing with Festival City Symphony a little bit in their next concert cycle. And I honestly can't remember what's on that program. I think it's an American program, but it's more unusual. I think we have some Barber, and then a few other composers that are less well known. Um, and I'm playing, I think it's the I think it's the 4A elegy up with Sheboygan Symphony. I could be wrong about which elegy it is. No, no, no. I'm playing with Sheboygan Symphony chorus. um, to be determined what it is. No, this
Right.
is the problem I have. I just like get the music, I practice it, I show up. I don't have the music yet, so I haven't started the practicing, so I don't remember. Um, and then I'm playing Fiddler on the Roof in April out in Menominee Falls. And I think that might be it for my spring, which is actually really busy for me. I try to do like one thing a month tops because otherwise I will go crazy and I don't have much time. But for my own like soul, I feel like I need to be playing that much because it is honestly like self-care for me at this point. I don't practice as much anymore, but when I do, I go in and it's just sort of meditative and lovely, which is a great point in life to be at for me.
Yeah, yeah. It's another reason why I kind of feel sorry for people who learn an instrument up to a particular level and then let's say when high school, juncture between high school and college, they quit, they hang it up. It's such a travesty not to have that as something to go to,
Mhm.
for the rest of your life. But to each their own. April,
Yeah.
this has been really fun talking with you, and lots of interesting things to think about. I know for all the viewers as they practice all weekend long. And so, thank you very much to you and to everybody watching out there. We'll see you again this time next Friday.
You had me at Jello.